Hey everyone, and welcome back or welcome to my channel. Hopefully this video comes out in both ears because finding out about that issue last video while reading the comments was unfortunate. Today's topic will be another why I'm worried about with Kwon Eunbi as the next soloist. Eunbi is definitely an interesting case because after doing a bit of research into her future isn't completely bleak where there is nothing completely redeeming about her current trajectory. However, despite all the potential benefits and opportunities that she's gained as of recent, it is not necessarily translating to the most notable and comfortable success in her career. And so the plan is to elaborate the different factors currently impacting her career trajectory and the issues behind them. But yeah, before I start, I'd appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to my channel. Without further ado, let's start off with the first factor. Starting off, being a soloist in general has its own disadvantages separate from the general disadvantages of being in the K-pop industry. There seems to be less hype for soloists in comparison to groups, unless the idol has a strong solo fan base from their previous or current group. Fortunately, Eunbi was initially able to bring more attention to her solo career due to the success of IZ*ONE. Willem would capitalize on this post-success through her quick debut as the first member to venture off post-disbandment. Definitely a great strategy as the memories of IZ*ONE still lingered as she debuted, and thus it felt like a call to action from WIZ*ONEs to show their devotion in supporting at the bare minimum the first few debuts. However, her solo stand abilities from IZ*ONE days doesn't seem to have been as significant, as the following comebacks would see a consistent decrease, indicating the lack of actual fans that she had in comparison to a solidarity support from general IZ*ONE fans. Other factors may have played a part in the gradual decrease, including the subjectivity of lacking that it factor. Similar to the discussions about Chaeyeon, there is a heavy requirement of perfectionism expected in particular with soloists, as they can't really rely on other members to offset the lack of certain skills to achieve an overall impact to an audience. For Eunbi's case, subjectively, she is relatively well-rounded, but I would say not in an outstanding manner to the point where she may be acknowledged for them. There seems to be a disconnect as those skills don't seem to be enough to be that major factor to distinguish Eunbi anymore from other idols. Even if she was extremely skilled, there is no complete guarantee that it would then equate to success for her, as highlighted in many of my other video discussions, where talent has been an aspect of consideration of standing an idol, but it is not the only priority to determine that or the success of an idol. As a result, this leaves soloists like Eunbi in a difficult journey of navigating the balance of understanding what her target audience may want, while also pursuing something that she enjoys. Music is one of the main faces to an idol's career, and so having the right songs make up a significant component of following a K-pop group or soloist long-term regardless of other factors. For Eunbi, there seems to be a disconnect with the favorability of her music, as it seemingly received a mixed reception. I mean, from the incorporation of jazzy swing within Door to UK garage within Glitch, Eunbi's initial releases play with interesting sounds that aren't as frequent within the general K-pop sphere. The upside to these differences is that she clearly distinguishes her music from being too generic and almost blending with every other release. However, the distinctiveness of these songs also have the slight downsides in that there are none to minimal histories that provide the assurance to the potential digestibility of these quote-unquote experimental sounds within K-pop. As a result, there are chances that the music doesn't completely connect like that, and it just might not be general public friendly, which is the case for most of Eunbi's music within the domestic sphere. This becomes a bit more significant and impactful towards K-pop artists who may not necessarily have larger dedicated fan bases, as general public attention then becomes the additional reliance to elevate their comebacks. In saying that, it's not like Eunbi's songs are hated on as really bad, but they never usually cross the line of having that impact of anticipating for the next comeback as well. One song that I wanted to highlight and could have elevated her is Glitch. I mean, the experimenting within the production really saw the song going in different places, and personally kept me tuned in the whole way through. However, that is my opinion, which is subjective to different listeners who could have received the song differently. As well as that, from a marketing point of view, there seems to be a notable domestic caderance in comparison to any international push. Obviously pretty valid considering the foundation of K-pop promotions and the capabilities of Willem all occur in a domestic sphere, and also international validation is not the end all be all. However, I feel like the mixed reception comes to play as Eunbi's music seems to resonate more more internationally in comparison to her domestic reception. Obviously, I don't think it's to the point where Eunbi needs to reroute to focus solely on the West, but sprinkles of further promotions to a more receptive audience could allow her to ride a small wave of potential success from other demographics, while spreading the risk of subjectivity in music. As of recent, the last two releases have also seen a transition from mini albums to single albums, which add that additional layer of risk in ensuring there is quality songs within the albums, or else this could set a path of slowly pulling away from general audiences and fans giving her not much attention. As a result of all of this combined, this thus puts pressure on the next factor, which coincidentally plays a pivotal role in Eunbi's career. This seems to be a recurring factor brought up within each Why I'm Worried analysis, whether intentional or not. To play a little devil's advocate, there is definitely a side discussion that could be had regarding the extent that companies could and should be blamed for the trajectory of their artists. However, for Eunbi's situation, I do wonder how Woollim has supported her for future growth. There are no distinct examples of mismanagement towards Eunbi, however, there also isn't too much to praise them on in terms of elevating her. Woollim to me is a barely passable mid-sized company with depleting visibility within the K-pop scene. They got their foot in the door of K-pop through Infinite, however, their new generation of groups like Golden Child, Rocket Punch, and Drippin' are not seeing much impact with notable decreases or plateaus from a domestic point of view, and also minimal international presence to back them up. This kind of reflects Eunbi's situation as well, up until recently, where she was getting some attention, but also nothing majorly impactful. I could give slight leeway to Woollim due to the physical and financial impacts of COVID. However, Woollim did also mutually agree to let Chaewon go to HYBE despite the glaring benefits that could have been had utilizing two IZ*ONE members. It really wouldn't be till her viral appearance at the Waterbomb Festival is when we would see most of her current success. However, this could be a whole other discussion because another question I wonder is how much of this post-Waterbomb success can we attribute to the company in comparison to Eunbi? Like, are we praising Woollim for doing the bare minimum of just accepting these opportunities for her? Or would there be way more complexities that actually show the competencies of Woollim promoting Eunbi? The overall general consensus about Woollim seems to be that they have not had the best track record of showing the capabilities to elevate or maintain the success of their artists. Once again, we can give leeway to them considering their relatively smallness and influence. However, this then puts into question the reason for why they have so many active groups alongside Eunbi. And so then we're back to square one on the whole subjectivity of fault and how much blame we can really apportion to the company. The final factor is two miscellaneous factors that have kind of combined into one section just because they both have varying impacts that don't feel completely negative for Eunbi in my eyes. The first one relates to ageism, which is a noticeable issue within K-pop as we can see through the constant debuting of really young idols. From what I've kind of noticed within the industry, it feels as though idols are deemed old if they hit early to mid-20s-ish, which is also the age in which Eunbi debuted in IZ*ONE and as a soloist. There is a noticeable origin point of favorability towards youth that leads to age and physical appearance playing a major factor in the marketability of an idol. Despite this, I do feel like I don't necessarily see this being a noticeable reason for the lack of success for Eunbi. Not that it doesn't play a factor at all. However, it really feels underlying as we see a constant mature association and concept that she has kind of embodied from Produce 48 to now. The other factor that doesn't feel completely negative is her appearance at Waterbomb, which the reason I say this is because the overall impact feels like a net positive for her career. It has seemingly revitalized what initially was feeling like a slowly depleting career by creating more opportunities beyond her idol career. In saying that, the notable downside and why this has been mentioned is the nature of Waterbomb has resulted in Eunbi being subjected to the weird comments and remarks about her. There has been an increased attention on her compared to previously, however, with a greater emphasis on her physical appearance as opposed to her music. What doesn't help at all is that Woollim does seem to flip-flop onto both sides of accepting this image alignment that creates more discourse on her physical appearance while then also taking legal action to protect Eunbi from said actions. Obviously, it's not only a Woollim at fault type of thing, as fans and commenters aren't completely scot-free and can take it too far sometimes. Ultimately, this leaves Eunbi in a weird state of receiving pros and cons from this viral attention, with the pros being all the opportunity that she's received and the cons being the viral general attention not necessarily translating into the success of her idol career. This does come down to whether there is a net positive felt by Eunbi, whether she can pivot this completely, or whether there's a way to kind of balance it all. As this era of Eunbi has been relatively recent, we will just have to wait and see on what path does become the most viable for her. Final thoughts. Eunbi has done well for herself despite the challenges that she's faced to get to where she is right now. She is currently in her wave era of receiving some high highs, but then also from time to time just kind of falling from the face of the earth in terms of being remembered. There is no short-term worries of dungeons or disbandment. However, I do hope that her trajectory doesn't fall too in line with Brave Girls of never properly being able to completely capitalize or even pivot their viral success to a greater longevity of a career. Eunbi is definitely playing it smart currently, as she is not completely just banked on her music to sustain her, with her different avenues being used to solidify the Kwon Eunbi brand. This might cause a slight disconnect in the perception and realities of her success if the other avenues continue to create more growth for her, but I do hope her main product of music does eventually get that boost as a cherry on top of her overall career. But yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts on Kwon Eunbi, her career trajectory as of now, what you think might be the disconnect, and any other factors that I may have missed that you think is kind of a factor to worry about. My next video will be on Dreamcatcher, who have made a name for themselves as one of the last few decently active third-gen girl groups, and potentially the only one with a smaller company by their side. I thought it would be interesting to look into what has contributed to this longevity of a career, despite not really knowing much about them too. But yeah, if you're interested to hear more about the success of Dreamcatcher, then please like and subscribe to keep up to date, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!